Hello, everyone. We are here today with Abbi Milner, and she is actually one of the newest Nutritional Revolution team members. And we're going to dive into her story about and her history with racing Xterra, triathlons. And we actually met, I think it was probably mid last year, actually via social, but I actually had the connection was I had worked with her sister, Amanda, and she is also a 70.3 rock star, as Abbi calls her. So a family of athletes for sure. And Abbi herself is a very active, like multi-sport mountain athlete. And we'll dive into kind of all that stuff. So I will let you, Abbi, introduce yourself and we can kind of dive into how you got into sport.
Okay, thanks, Kyla. So I grew up in Wenatchee, Washington. I currently live in Bend, Oregon, but I actually started swimming was my main sport all through middle school and high school. So I probably started swimming around the age of like 8 or 9, and just fell in love with it immediately. And then around when I was 13, 14, I kind of fell into an eating disorder, which we'll touch more on later, but kind of after that, then got back into swimming. So swam full time all through high school, was definitely my main sport. I always loved running. I always loved biking. I road biked with my dad all the time growing up, and that was really fun. And then after high school, kind of started to run more. So I went to Western Washington University. I graduated last December, and actually ended up walking on to Western's track and cross country team. So that was really fun. I really missed having a team sport. And I had gotten really into triathlon. So did my first triathlon as a junior in high school and kind of just did them for fun. And then freshman year of college, I kind of started to get more serious with it and was like, oh, wow, I can actually like run pretty well, was falling in love with road biking more. And then ended up just talking to the coach at Western, and he let me walk onto the cross country and track team. So it's
Awesome.
pretty cool to have that opportunity. And so then with triathlon, kind of got more serious after that. I ended up going to Worlds a couple different times, just age group Worlds, but had a really like awesome experience, and ended up doing pretty well at that point and kind of wanted to pursue it more. And this was probably right after college. I was like, I want to do the road triathlon thing, kind of put my all into that. And around then is kind of also when I started struggling with nutrition, but kind of took a little bit of a break around then. And then that's when I discovered mountain biking and honestly just like fell in love with it immediately. So the past 2 years, I really have just gotten more into that, more into skiing, and just fallen in love with being in the mountains. And now I did my first couple Xterras last year and like
Awesome.
loved it. So yeah, that's kind of my goal now, is more to go the Xterra route, but really to just like enjoy it and enjoy being outside. So
That sounds amazing.
yeah.
And where did you grow up? Did you grow up in a mountain town or?
So Wenatchee is like a very small town in Washington. We're like right smack in the middle of Washington. So it's not a mountain town, but it's definitely like it's really close to Leavenworth and like the North Cascades. So we have access to the mountains there. So we grew up like skiing and running and biking.
Awesome. And you said you road biked with your dad. Did he ever compete in sport, or either of your parents compete in sport, or?
Yeah, both of them are awesome athletes. My dad is actually training for his first Ironman triathlon right now.
Cool.
He's done a lot of half irons and he's done tons of road biking. Like, there's this big like 150 ride around Mount Rainier that he's done a lot.
Oh,
So
wow.
yeah, he's definitely a go-getter.
That's awesome. That's great. And does he do any of the mountain stuff too? Does he do any of the skiing and all that stuff?
Yes, he's a huge backcountry skier and mountain biker as well. So
Awesome.
it's funny. I remember he took me mountain biking when I was like 12, and we went up this like super steep, like rocky hill, and I was like not having it at all. And I was like, I hate mountain biking. I don't want to do this. And I think there was like some tears on that ride. But it's funny, like looking back now, I'm like, I wish that I would have like gone on just a couple more rides, because when I started mountain biking like a year or two ago, I like fell in love with it immediately. I'm like, why didn't I go when I was like 12? And my dad's like, I tried to take you.
Did you, at the time when your dad took you when you were 12, did you have your own mountain bike?
No, I didn't. I think I was like on one of our friends, or we rented one or something. So
Yeah.
maybe that made a difference too, if it wasn't the right fit or something.
That's so funny. I had a similar experience with my dad. He's 6'4", and he took me out around the same age. I think I was like, I just started high school, and I was doing basketball in school, but he like wanted me to get into some other sports and kind of like keep up my endurance during the off season. And so he put me on his hardtail mountain bike, and like for a 6'4" frame male. And again, took me like similar situation on like the rockiest, what felt like the steepest hill ever. And I think there was also some tears on that ride for sure. And I like had to put it off, I'm sure, for like several weeks before I went back and tried that again. It like shocked my system, but yeah, and then fell in love with it. So pretty rad. And then, so with the Xterra stuff, you mentioned kind of falling in love with that. What do you think you like more so about Xterra, or how is that different from like the road racing world for you? What did you love about kind of switching over there?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for me is mountain biking, honestly. I think when I was training for road, the hardest part for me was like getting out on my like long road rides.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I just don't like love it. I feel like I could last about an hour and a half, and then I'd be like, okay, I'm ready to like be off of my bike right now. I mean, I love road biking in like the sense that you can like enjoy the views, and there's so much I do love about it. But that was the one thing that was hard for me. And my coach was always like, you didn't do your 4-hour ride. I'm like, it's so long to be on a road bike.
Yeah.
And then with mountain biking, I like can't stay off of it. I think
Yeah.
that like there's just so much going on, and it's so fun, like feeling the dirt, and yeah, just like being outside and connecting with nature more. And that's what I love about Xterra. It's so much about the adventure and like being outside, and also the community around it too. Here in Bend, there's so many awesome people that mountain bike, and we have a really fun community of
Yeah.
guys and gals that love it. So that's a big part too. And at the races too, I feel like everyone is very, I don't know, like there's the competitive sense, but it's also pretty laid back. Like afterwards, they always have like pizza and beer, and just the whole community
Yeah.
aspect is awesome.
That is awesome. Did you ever play around with a gravel bike before you went onto a mountain bike, or?
I actually have not really gravel biked at all. I do
Yeah.
want to get one. I actually sold my road bike, so I kind of want to get a gravel bike so I can do a little bit of road and a little bit of
Yeah.
gravel. I think
Yeah.
that's a fun mix.
Cool. That's
Yeah.
awesome. And so if we like jump back to a little bit of your history there, you said you took a break in competing, and you said that was kind of timed around when there was some nutrition struggles going on. Did you realize initially that it was nutrition related, or what kind of caused that break in sport? Was it kind of fatigue, injury? Talk about that a
Yeah.
little bit.
So I feel like there's kind of two parts to this. So kind of back when I was 13, 14, I feel like that's when everything started. And so I started swimming and kind of like lost some weight. I mean, I think that I wouldn't even say like lost weight. I kind of just went from being like a 9, 10 year old like little girl to like growing quickly and like leaned out.
Mm-hmm.
And it's hard to say like what initially started it, but I remember in middle school we learned all about like calories, fats, like macros, everything. And this was like in middle school, and I remember my middle school teacher like talking about how like too many calories was bad, and that's how people gain weight, and like people become fat because they eat too much. And like I just remembered that like sticking in my head, and just like all of a sudden being like terrified of food, as well as like kind of getting obsessed with the numbers of it. And he had us do an assignment where we tracked everything that we ate for 3 days,
Oh, wow.
and then we're also supposed to track our activity level. And then he kind of used, like, he went through the class and like used everyone's example, and like how
Oh,
like your
wow.
energy input should be equaling your energy output. And I just remember like thinking about that so much from then on. And I think that's kind of what triggered it a little bit. I know
Hmm.
there's like, it's like eating disorders are tricky because it's mental. And so I think there's a lot of aspects that go into that. But I think that was kind of the first trigger. And then over the next like year and a half, I lost like 30 pounds. I think at my lowest, I was like 78 pounds and I was like
Wow.
5 feet tall. And I remember the doctor like saying, if you lose 1 more pound, you're going to be in the hospital and
Wow.
all this stuff. So, yeah, that was definitely a dark time, but I found an amazing counselor and kind of was able to work through that. And then, yeah, after about a year and a half, I would say I kind of was out of it for the most part and able to swim all through high school. And I think looking back now, I felt like I had recovered, but I think I was still struggling with a lot of stuff. And I think like looking back, I'm like, I think for a lot of high school kids, they're not eating enough, especially we were doing swimming twice a day. We were also like running and doing dry land practices. And I think my nutrition was definitely not good then. But then into college, um, my performance really suffered and I was injured a lot running.
Mm.
I was probably injured more than I raced. And then I managed to still like do somewhat well, but then when I was getting ready for my third worlds, I fell and broke my wrist.
Oh, shoot.
Yeah, and that race, that was supposed to be worlds for road in Australia. So that was like a couple weeks before worlds. So I ended up still going to Australia, but I didn't race.
Mm.
And then I completely healed, like recovered that wrist, fell and broke my other wrist.
Oh, no.
Yeah, so that was crazy, but I feel like at the same time it helped me like take a step back and be like, okay, something might be off here. And also just feeling a little bit burnt out of road racing at that point. So that's kind of when I took a break and I was like, I need to figure some things out. I need to feel mentally better about racing before I pursue racing and training hard. So that's
Yeah.
kind of when I took most of the break and then kind of reached out to you um, shortly after that. So yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And so with the kind of, you mentioned looking back at it now,
Mhm.
you thought at that time you were recovered. And when you say that, do you feel like you felt recovered in terms of like maybe regaining body weight, or was it more mental, or was it both? Or
I think it was a little bit of both, but I think definitely I still struggled mentally a lot in high school with everything and I had gained a little bit of weight, but I look back at pictures and like as a swimmer, I was like so little. And I just think if I had some more like muscle and even body fat for swimming, I would have performed so much better. And compared to how I feel now, I think that I definitely was not recovered at all. So yeah.
yeah. So do you feel like now you're able, like energy levels are better and things like that, since the nutrition has changed?
I think energy levels for sure. And then just injury too, like looking back in college, being injured all the time. I think that a lot of that is because I was at such a low body weight and I never had any stress fractures, but it was so many like tendonitis and little like nagging injuries from
Mm.
overuse that like would not go away. And I'd go to physical therapy so much. And yeah, I just wonder if I had been feeling my body properly then, I probably would have felt a lot better and recovered quicker from those injuries.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think the biggest thing too is like mental clarity. I think in college it definitely got better and I was lucky to have such an amazing supportive team and I felt like our team was amazing and that no one I think there's a lot of college teams where girls fall into eating disorders because there's that competitive body image and weight loss. But our team was awesome. It was like different body types. Everyone was just amazing and really encouraging. So that I think actually helped. But
That's good. Yeah.
definitely in high school, I felt like I was still struggling mentally with everything. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
And with the kind of the nutrition changes and implementing that over the years of healing from the eating disorder, but then getting back into sport and like aligning your nutrition with that, what did you like realize, or what do you think was like the hardest part for you, maybe nutritionally, in those changes to accommodate your sports performance appropriately?
Yeah, I think realizing just how much you need to be eating, especially as an endurance athlete and someone that likes to go on like runs and bike rides like every day. Just I think the biggest difference was learning how to train like around fueling. So before, during, and after, and how much energy I felt during my workouts doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then I think also realizing how much protein I needed was big too. I
Yeah.
was vegetarian in college for a while and
Okay.
vegan for like a couple months. But I added meat back in and feel a lot better with that too. So yeah.
Awesome. That's great. And with kind of the, let's see, nutrition now, what is your, because I know you are a huge baker as well, or
Yeah.
you like to cook and like come up with really rad recipes. And as a side note for everybody who's listening, Abbi is the one who has come up with a lot of our like recipe books for the sports nutrition challenge, or not challenge, the sports nutrition education program that we're running right now. So we've gotten a lot of great feedback on that. A lot of people love the like berry smoothie that's in there. We're using that one. So Abbi's very crafty in the kitchen. So what are your, and I love that too, because you're really emphasizing to like real whole quality nutrient dense foods, as opposed to like maybe supplementation or processed foods or something like that. And so with kind of the love for the baking and the cooking and then being active in sport, do you have a kind of go-to pre-training session meal that you love? And if so, what is that?
Well, that's a hard question. There's a lot of things I like, but I really am a big fan right now of like power muffins.
Oh
So
yeah.
like run fast, eat slow. They're like superhero muffins. I like
Mm-hmm.
love making those. Anything that's like I can kind of make ahead and have throughout the week is really nice.
Mm-hmm.
Muffins I feel like are great because they're good like source of carbs. I also am just a big fan of like toast and a little bit of peanut butter with banana on top. That's
Yeah.
probably my go-to because it's
Awesome.
easy in the morning before like a bike ride or whatever.
Yeah, definitely. And then do you make your own like training fuel for during training, or do you use products?
I go back and forth between, I like to make my own.
Mm-hmm.
I like to make like little energy date balls.
Mm-hmm.
But if I don't have my own, I love like Go Macro bars or Picky bars are a couple of my favorites,
Yeah.
especially for longer rides. Yeah, Picky bars is definitely up there.
Yeah. And kind of speaking of the during fuel sources, was it a challenge for you going from fueling on the bike on the road versus fueling on the bike on a trail?
Yeah, yeah. I think yeah. It's easy to like take nutrition in when you are road biking and mountain biking. I definitely like stop. Generally, like will stop after a long climb and I'll eat a bar then.
Yeah.
I will say I have struggled in Xterra figuring out how to fuel during.
Mm.
So if anyone has any tips, that'd be great because just like trying to drink and eat while you're on the bike, and the bike's the longest portion. It's usually like at least 2 hours. So
Mhm.
that has been a struggle trying to figure out how to get fuel. And then I think I'm going to start wearing a running pack actually. So
I've
that I
seen a
can
lot of
just,
people doing that.
yeah, while
Yeah.
I'm riding. But yeah, it's definitely a struggle, especially on more technical courses. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That might be a quick way to fix that. But yeah, I can imagine like it's already hard enough sometimes for people to fuel on a road bike,
mhm.
let alone taking that to like a bumpy, rooty, rocky, single
Yeah,
track or something like that. I would imagine people would have a really hard time doing that without completely stopping and putting a foot down. And let's see. So with kind of the kind of history, and you had mentioned. Actually, I'm not sure if you mentioned it, but I know we wanted to talk about it, was bringing up your experience with like amenorrhea and how I'll let you tell everyone what's been going on in the last month. But do you want to kind of like let people know about that experience and like what that was like for you and what's been going on lately?
yeah, definitely. So yeah, back when I was like 13, I hadn't had my period yet. And then kind of went into that eating disorder. And I think that really kind of messed things up hormonally for me. So I didn't have a period at all. And even through high school, like still didn't have it. And I like my doctors were like a little bit concerned, but then a lot of them were like, well, you had an eating disorder around like puberty, so it might have like delayed things a little bit, but like you'll probably be fine. So I sort of just ignored it, and then into college still didn't have it. So like no period at all. So I finally went to a female doctor, I think my junior year of college, and was like told her everything. And she basically was like, oh, it's probably because you're an athlete and we'll put you on the pill. So I went on the pill and I had a period. So she was like, she also wanted to check and make sure that there wasn't anything like anatomy, I don't know, wanted to make sure that things were all good there. So, yeah, she was like, great, like just stay on the pill and you'll have a period. And so I was like, okay. So I was on the pill for about a year, but I felt really like not very good around every time I had a period. And it finally got to the point where I was like, I just do not want to be on this anymore, especially like, I feel like mood wise, it affected me a lot. So as soon as I stopped taking the pill, I stopped getting my period, which was kind of crazy for me because I was like, okay, the pill made me get a period, but obviously it didn't fix the problem because as soon as I stopped getting my period. So that was a couple years ago now. So that was like right after my senior year. So about a year and a half ago. And then kind of over the course of that year, I read Stacy Sims' book, Roar.
Awesome.
I was just doing all of this research on like why I wasn't getting my period, and kind of learned more about what can happen when you don't have it, especially long-term effects. And that's kind of what scared me, but also motivated me. And also I do want to have kids someday, not anytime soon, but yeah, I was scared. And so that's also kind of when I looked up like your work and everything, and just was really more and more interested in nutrition. So I reached out to you in like the fall, I think. And I feel like right off the bat, we didn't work so much on that. But then in December, when I like still had like no signs of a period, I read No Period, Now What? And I was kind of like, okay, I need to make some changes if I want to be an athlete long term and be healthy. So yeah, that's kind of when I really just like dove into my nutrition and really made sure that I was getting enough fuel around my workouts. And in No Period, Now What, they suggest that you stop all exercise completely. And I did not do that. I kind of wanted to see what would happen if I just really focused on good fuel in and around my workouts. And I got my period a month ago, which is crazy. Yeah, but it was so crazy to me that it worked, because I think part of me was like, I just like had never had a period naturally. And so just part of me is like, I don't know if this is going to work. And I was honestly feeling a little discouraged because I felt like I had put so much work into it and like gained weight and, was really trying and nothing was happening. But with a little patience, it came. So
that's
yeah,
awesome. And I think, and you mentioned gaining weight. So one of the kind of big things that we talked about and you implemented was not just increasing like nutrient density, but increasing nutrient energy and taking in more calories to kind of maybe meet your body's needs for especially what you're doing, but also to just kind of let the body know, hey, I'm not in any sort of low energy availability. I can have enough energy coming in to create my sex hormones and all of that stuff and have a cycle. And how many months do you think it took of following like a higher nutrient dense, higher energy, like intake diet or nutrition before you got your first cycle?
I think it is a little bit hard to say because I think that I had definitely ramped things up like even last summer, which is almost a year ago now. And so I think honestly, it was definitely a process, but I really started ramping things up more in like December, I would say. So about 6 months-ish of like really ramping it up. But again, I feel like over the course of the last year and a half, I was focusing on it. So
Awesome.
yeah.
Yeah, that's great. And in that No Period Now What book is by Dr. Nicola Rinaldi. And that's a great book for anyone who's struggling with amenorrhea or, loss of period or something like that. That's a great book to read through, because there's a lot of examples from people's personal experiences in there, which I think is a really helpful tool to be able to like relate, instead of just getting that like information, kind of put in front of your face. It's like, okay, great, whatever. But being able to hear other people's experiences and their struggles, and kind of like being essentially maybe initially concerned with the actual process. Like, is this going to work? It's been 5 months. I've put on 20 pounds. I still have no period. Like, how much longer am I going to have to wait? And to be able to know that people are experiencing those same exact emotions as you, and that eventually it was successful for them. And, some people it took 3 months, some people it's taken a couple years. So it takes time, and everybody's body is a little bit different, but to be able to kind of remind yourself and kind of hear other people's personal stories, I think is a really helpful tool to kind of get yourself like a little bit more on board and know that it's also happening to other people. Yeah. So, I mean, I really think that's wonderful that you shared your experience with that, because I think a lot of people have struggled with that, whether they've maybe missed a couple periods, or like similar to your experience, never got their period to start with. And the experience too with the OBGYN putting you on a pill and getting your period, like you noticed, it's a Band-Aid, as soon as you stopped it, your cycle didn't come back. And so there's some things going on, maybe nutritionally and nutritional balance that needs to be kind of worked on a little bit there to kind of get that back. So I'm super happy that you were patient with yourself and like put the time in to do that. And now we just keep going. We keep chugging along. And now we know too, with like Stacy's book and her kind of research on sex differences in sport too, now that you are having a cycle, how to adjust your nutrition depending on where you are in your cycle. So that's a really helpful tool as well. So that's Roar by Dr. Stacy Sims, if any of you guys are listening, and then we'll put it in the show notes as well for people to check out. And also the No Period Now What for people. And then let's see, for kind of speaking of that experience and the history of all this, and like working on getting your cycle back, and before you were working on getting your cycle back before COVID happened, thinking that we were going to have flourishing racing year. And I know you had some big goals on the calendar for this year, and there was some maybe a little bit of like, do you feel like you struggled like a little bit mentally with like trying to heal from amenorrhea, but then also like wanting to be like at race weight or anything like that, thinking that there was going to be some bigger races on the calendar? Or what was that experience like for you?
Yeah, so as far as kind of recovery now and looking at racing, I think that it is a little bit hard mentally, because I didn't take a ton of time off this winter, but I definitely scaled back my training a little bit. And like I said, was like eating a lot more, and I don't feel like I'm at that like performance level right now. And that's definitely hard, just to like be okay with that and know that like looking at the big picture versus the short term.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I'd be lying if I said it was easy, because it has been hard, and there has been days where I've cried to my boyfriend and I'm like, I don't feel like I'm where I was a year ago, and I feel like I weigh more than I did. But just trying to like remind myself that it is about the bigger picture, and that my like long-term health is more important than doing well at a couple of races this year. So I think that that's been good, just like reminding myself of that, and knowing that I think in the long run I will feel so much better and be performing better if my hormones are healthy and working right. And so yeah, I think in that sense it has been hard, but I think in some ways COVID has almost been a blessing in that sense. And I like don't in any means want to say that it's like a good thing, because I know it is so hard, and there has been really hard parts of it too, but just to give myself time and space to make sure that I am mentally in a good place, and that I'm giving my body time to like fully heal.
Yeah.
So it takes the pressure off of me a little bit, knowing that races aren't going to be the same this year, and that I can kind of push my goals to next year and like use this time to build a base, kind of get back into things, and then see like what happens next year and years down the road.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. And I think that's important to be able to see the silver lining in all of the stuff that's going on right now with COVID and, everything that comes along with that. And I think you're not alone in that. And I think that that's an important piece. And I think a lot of people struggle with it, but I also think what I've noticed, at least in the last several podcasts, when I'm talking to a lot of these high performing athletes, is they are able to see that silver lining. And like my first podcast interview with Flick, she had huge lofty goals this year, and she eventually wants to retire soon. And she thought maybe this was going to be the year, is going to be her last bet. But at the same time, her shoulder was like wrecked, and her doctors were like, you got to get surgery at some point. Like, when are you going to do it? And she decided to take the plunge and do it before COVID started, thinking that she was going to be able to kind of hopefully quickly heal and then be able to race. And sure enough, COVID occurred and races got pushed and postponed, which gave her, unfortunately or fortunately, a really good chunk of time to be able to really focus on healing and not push herself into anything too soon. So to be able to kind of see that silver lining, I think, is really important, and kind of focus on that kind of stuff too during this really challenging time is important. So I'm glad you're able to do that as well. And like you mentioned too, like there were hard parts, like it's not easy, and I understand that as well. And I know we've had some check-ins, and there's been some tears and stuff, because it's hard. And so being able to have your community of people too, and talk about that, and also raise awareness about that, and like share your story with us, like we're doing right now. I think that's awesome to kind of help other people out, maybe who might be in a similar boat. And then let's see, so with kind of the postponing of races, do you have any like races that are on the calendar for next year that you kind of have your eye on at all? Or
yeah, I definitely think Xterra is for sure. I just had so much fun last year. Last year I did Portland, and then a race in Tahoe, and then Austin, Utah. So that's the nationals, I think, or regionals. But yeah, it was so fun. So I'm thinking next year I'd love to do Beaver Creek, Colorado, and then Ogden, Utah again, and hopefully qualify for Maui for Worlds for age group.
cool.
Would be really fun. So yeah, we'll see.
Awesome. All right. And then I guess a couple other just like final questions. So we talked about your goals, but also how has your training changed now with COVID and also races being postponed? Did you change up how you're training, or the intensity or duration? What does that look like for you?
Yeah, so kind of after I like took a little bit of a break, I feel like this last year I've just really had a lot of fun with my training, and just really gotten out on the bike with friends and enjoyed that community aspect of it. And so that is kind of what I'm doing now, just really like loving to be out on the bike for hours with my friends, and trail runs. And so nothing like crazy specific right now. I recently have been trying to add in some more like hill sprints and that kind of stuff, a little bit of speed work, but definitely still like building a base. And then I think another big thing that's changed this last year is my strength training. I've gotten a lot more into that and really enjoyed. I did CrossFit this last winter and
Cool.
just had fun, and felt really good doing it. So yeah, strength training has been a huge added piece.
That's awesome. I think that's another thing too, like that people are actually, endurance athletes specifically, are like, hey, during the normal, training season, I kind of did a little bit of strength. It wasn't my number one priority. And now it's like, let's focus on strength and like even rehab exercises and all that stuff. I think a lot of athletes are giving a little bit more time to that, which I think is hugely important. So before we kind of end off here, I'm going to ask you I'm not sure what the one or the other kind of question. So if you could, or would you rather, that's what it is. Okay. Would you rather only be able to trail run for the rest of your life, or only be able to mountain bike for the rest of your life?
Mountain bike for sure.
Okay. Awesome. I'm with you on that one. So let's see. So where can people find you, find your blog recipes? If they're local, are you taking personal training clients? We also have nutrition sessions too via Nutritional Revolution with Abbi, but where can people find your blogs and your personal training stuff?
Yeah, so I had a website called Trial with Flair, and that's still the URL right now, but I'm kind of rebranding and calling it Wildly Well, just because I love, like, I want to help people with their wellness as well as like being outside and kind of like tying those two things together and like the wellness that I feel like being outside in the wild has brought me. So Wildly Well is the name of my website, and you can find it at wildly-well.net. And then on there, you can kind of see my different like personal training and nutrition services. And then, yes, I am taking personal training right now in Bend, and then as well as like online training too. So if people want customized strength plans, I'm doing that too.
Awesome.
So,
All right. Well, that was Abbi, you guys. Check her out. Work with her, nutrition, personal training, all that good stuff. She's got a ton of great content. And not only is she amazing in the kitchen and on the dirt, but she's also an amazing photographer. So she's got some beautiful pictures of nature, of delicious food, all on her site as well. That was all done by herself. So she's got a lot of great things going on, and we like love Abbi here at Nutritional Revolution. She's a great addition to our team and helping with our recipe development and photography of the recipe development, because I cannot do that stuff. So I am very grateful for Abbi. Awesome. Well, thank you, Abbi, so much for hanging in here with all of us, and we'll speak to you soon. If anybody has any questions too for you that get posted in any of the stuff, we'll reach back out and maybe we can answer those for people. All right.
well, thank you.
All right.